by fellow Freedom Brothers, Sovereign Thinkers, Ultimate News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangrove, South Florida. And today's date is Wednesday, May 9th, 2018. It was a little bit warm and breezy in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm at the Himmishi District as usual. And doing a show at Squiggy's New York style pizzeria located at 207 Southwest 2nd Street or Himmishi Drive in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Want mom and pop pizza instead of the corporate chains? Come on down. They don't deliver. And dudes are from New York and Jersey. Woo! How fascinating, right? Cool stuff. Late night brunch, late night snack, and all that. And whatever you do, show some courtesy wherever you go to these facilities, including Squiggy's and all around the Himmishi District. You want to start trouble? Leave that candy-ass attitudes at home. All right, I had to let that out. But interesting stuff has been happening as usual. Looks like Donald Trump has withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, which was never been approved by the Senate. So it's been unconstitutional. I don't know why people are still talking about this. And of course, the fear factor about Iran and Russia and Syria, but that's not all right. But if the United States goes around other countries telling them what to do, that's exceptional. And I'm not saying I'm against my country, but I always see rogue issues, imperialism, which does violate our U.S. Constitution. Like I said before, especially most of my regular listeners, I support common defense, not imperial offense. Some people may get defensive on that, but I don't care. Typical cloak and daggering going on, and you check out a good colleague, good person, good folks that does a show called Resurrect Republic on Republic Broadcast Network, RBN. And I've been checking some of the stuff he had with Ken O'Keefe on stuff on 9/11 and all that. Interesting stuff. And if everyone still believes that the radical Muslims are responsible for it, or Muslims are responsible for it, your head's in the clouds. Some of these individuals, even on these big name mainstream news stations, including Fox News, for an example, still believe that. Try to sell that to you. Don't fall for it. Why we're attacking the country because of 9/11? They're going to attack Iran because we had after 9/11? Please, don't buy it. It's a lot bigger than what it is. Like I said before, it's always been a New World Order agenda, and I still say it to this day until you have pure evidence, concrete, solid evidence saying I've been mistaken. I will take that. So, enough of the nonsense ranting or my digression. I do that at times, now and then, which is okay. I like to speak my mind as well. So, first thing I want to be talking about, actually came out from what, who, what, and why. Came out today under Deep State Politics. JFK files reveal U.S. biological warfare plans against Cuba. Oh, really? So, we'll just check this out. And it's written by Jimmy Falls. As it says here, as it reads, in December of 1975, congressional staffer Locke Johnson was searching through classified papers at the LBJ Library in Austin, Texas. Yeah, LBJ, Lyndon Backstabbing Johnson. I know it's banned by Coastal calling Backstabber. When he came across something he couldn't believe, a covert plan by the U.S. military to deploy biological weapons against Cuba. This was more than Johnson was bargaining for, even though he was at the archive looking for files related to covert actions directed against Cuba. By July 1975, the Watergate hearings had finished, and 3 separate high-level investigations were underway, all aimed at revealing covert and possibility of illegal activity of the U.S. intelligence agencies, including assassination. Johnson was working as top aide to Senator Frank Church, Democrat from Idaho, chair of the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, the so-called Church Committee. The American public knew that their government had a tense relationship with Cuba. especially with its feisty leader Fidel Castro. The U.S. had unsuccessfully underwritten the Cuban exile paramilitary invasion of the Bay of Pigs in 1961. Disaster in every sense. I want what we be doing before I proceed. I'm gonna put that out there on the National Security Archives. I'm gonna look for the National Security Archives Bay of Pigs. I'm gonna add this to the footnotes of the show. So you can really interesting stuff. And plus, I have people from Cuba or Cuban descent. I sent it to them like, wow. And this is why you always got to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Now I'll continue on here. And just a year later, the world came to a brink of nuclear apocalypse after a showdown with the Soviet Union over nuclear missiles it had placed in Cuba. What the public was not aware of then and would only discover it in later decades was that the CIA had attempted on all manner of assassination plots against Castro, in addition to widespread sabotage actions, such as burning sugarcane fields and blowing up power plants, with the goal of undermining Cuba's communist government. Some of the assassination plots were exotic: a poisoned diving suit, an exploding shell, an exploding cigar, poison pills, and exploding pen. One of the more startling revelations was that the CIA had been working closely with the mafia in its efforts to eliminate Castro. Yeah, that's how come they had Batista as their butt boy. Okay, but that's not what shocked Johnson that day, achieving ruination. He came across a memo dated October 30th, 1964, from the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the Secretary of Defense in response to an earlier presidential request for new ideas related to Cuba. The Joint Chiefs proposed a project code named Square Dance, which Johnson caustically referred to as the first new bright idea. Johnson relayed to his superiors at the Church Committee the details of Project Square Dance. The proposal envisioned the destruction of the Cuban economy by introducing aerially from offshore a sugarcane plant parasite called bunga. The program would begin with a 30% reduction of anticipated Cuban sugar production. There's page 6 of that. And within 3 to 6 years, the ruination of the sugar industry would be achieved. But that wasn't all. Johnson quoted directly from the GCS memo. The economic and political disturbance caused by this attack could be exacerbated and exploited by such measures as spreading hoof and mouth disease among draft animals, controlling rainfall by cloud seeding, mining cane fields, burning cane, and directing the other acts of conventional sabotage against the cane milling and transportation systems, emphasis added in the original document. Hoof and mouth disease, sometimes referred as foot and mouth disease, is highly infectious and affects animals such as cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. The disease causes high fever, followed by blisters in the animal's mouth and feet, while they're rarely affecting humans. It can bring devastating economic consequences to farmers. Containing a 2001 outbreak in the UK could cost some £8 billion or $12 billion in public and private outlays. In their memo about the Square Dance proposal, U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff spells out the strategic value of the project. Square Dance would furnish another option to the United States in bringing about the collapse of the Castro regime. The memo unearthed by Johnson is not only the sub-instance of the U.S. military proposing to use biological warfare against Castro's Cuba. And there's some stuff right in here you can look up for yourselves from the National Security Archives on biological agents and all that. Interesting stuff here. The JFK document released last year revealed an intelligence memorandum from 1962 discussing the possibility of using biological agents to induce crop failure, which would appear to be would be of natural origin. A U.S. Army memo from 1963, recently released by the National Archives, lists a number of ideas to exploit Cuba's vulnerabilities, including the initiation of biological warfare against vegetable and human animal tissue, except human. The October 30th, 1964 memo referenced in Johnson's book, The National Security Intelligence, but digitally released last month by National Archives, gives a clearer picture of what that might have looked like. Bunga, also known as Angina indica, is a flowery weed that acts as a root parasite to nearby plants. It can be particularly harmful to sugarcane crops, where which were Cuba's primary economic output. U.S. intelligence sabotage efforts have long targeted sugar crops, including night raids from offshore boats, planting incendiary devices in fields, but this was something different. Like the earlier memo from 1962, this one mentions the need for deniability. It appears feasible to introduce gradually Bunga into Cuba and maintain a basis for plausibly disavowing U.S. involvement. The 1964 memo leaves no doubt as to the ultimate goal of this program. Joint Chiefs of Staff continue to believe that the ultimate objective toward Cuba must be to establish a government in Cuba that is acceptable to the United States. Yes, have a bellboy, like they did with Batista. He was a dictator himself, too. And I did an article on that and pertaining to abolishing Radio Marti. Talks about that, too. So I will continue on. Worst kind of foreign policy mischief. Johnson makes clear that he does not know if this plan for forcing regime change in Cuba was ever implemented and suggests that the White House may have been skeptical of the idea, but the alarm in Johnson's own memo is apparent. The mere writing of this kind of proposal is reprehensible first step toward the worst kind of foreign policy mischief. Find it even more repugnant than contingency plans for assassination. These are not the kinds of recommendations which should filter up to the White House from the intelligence community. The agency must have a better sense of what is acceptable policy, legally and morally. The result of Square Dance would have been parasitic death for the major plant and animal life in Cuba. The feeble efforts of the CIA to direct assassination attempts against Castro pale by comparison with this army proposal for covert action. I believe Square Dance deserves our attention. If assassination is unacceptable, surely, too, is the widespread destruction of plant and animal life through covert germ warfare. In 1964, the international law governing the use of biological weapons was the Geneva Protocol of 1925, but its jurisdiction at the time was limited. The international spread of disease as a method of warfare would be a violation of the Geneva Protocol if the U.S. was a party, which it was not. Dr. Richard Price, who teaches politics and international law at the University of British Columbia, told why the Geneva Protocol of 1925 banned not just asphyxiating gases, but also bacteriological weapons. But the U.S. did not ratify that until 1975, so was not bound by it in the early 1960s. Price points out, however, that the use of the chemical herbicide Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, was also technically not illegal at the time for the same reason, certainly caused plenty of controversy. And there's photos on this as well. Many of these people who got caught by Agent Orange suffered from it. People who are civilians in Vietnam suffered dearly, and many of the veterans that served in the United States, many of them got illnesses and died of cancer from the cause from that particular product. And you could say, thanks to Monsanto for making that a reality, right? That was a fact. Use of the parasitic plants like Bunga, while perhaps not the first thing that comes to mind when thinking of biological weapons, it's nevertheless considered a dangerous form of biowarfare by some scholars. Of course, the U.S. had not officially declared war against Cuba or gained UN authorization, thus the need for a plausible deniability. What really happened in Korea? The potential use of germ warfare against Cuba, while itself remarkable, is intriguing for another reason. In the Korean War, the Chinese and North Koreans had protested that the U.S. was using biological weapons against the North Korean people. Downed Air Force pilots had confessed to it, who claimed that after their return from North Korean prisoners of war camps, they were victims of brainwashing. A long-suppressed and controversial International Commission report concluded that the allegations were true. The issue surfaced more recently with the release of next Fuzaki drama series Wormwood. Is an exploration of the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of government scientist and CIA employee Frank Olson in 1953 and his family's decades-long effort to find out what really happened. Olson had worked at the Fort Detrick, a U.S. Army base in Maryland that happened to be at the center of the U.S. biological weapons research. The Wormwood narrative suggests that Olson had doubts and guilt about the work he was doing as it related to the Korean War, and that the CIA had him murdered to prevent him from ever speaking out about the projects. While the 1964 GCS memos neither confirm nor negate allegations about the use of biological weapons in Korea, it is clear that the U.S. military was not opposed to using such methods, even if that meant causing drastic harm to the entire civilian population. What's also noteworthy is the timing of the memo. The year of 1964. President Lyndon Johnson is now in power after the assassination of JFK, and the plan to overthrow Castro is still a strategic goal. Previous failures dislodged Castro, which led to the risk of nuclear annihilation in the Cuban Missile Crisis, were apparently not strong enough warning signals for the president and GCS. Excuse me. The goal of U.S. policy toward Cuba will remain regime change, but President Johnson would have his hands full with an escalating conflict and ultimate quagmire in Vietnam, one that Kennedy had been seeking to withdraw from before his timely death. That summer 1975, Locke Johnson came to an understanding of what his government was capable of. Although it appears that the White House ultimately rejected the GCS plan, it's easy to emphasize with Johnson's horror that the U.S. would seriously propose such actions. It would be many decades before the American public learned the shocking truth. If the Church Committee had decided to reveal all of those realities, it would have changed the public perception of U.S. foreign policy, would have challenged the American notion of American exceptionalism. Perhaps a more unsettling question is whether those tendencies present in the Joint Chiefs of 1964 are present in the hearts and minds of high office leaders today. Something to really look at. So what do you think? Very intriguing indeed. And there's a lot of other links here related to this as well. So it's very admiring when people, you have to really look, see that's why we go look, see how far deep the rabbit hole goes. And now, like what happened with the Korean conflict, why North Korea didn't like the United States? Well, they had a grudge against that nation since the conflict. We go from the very beginning, based on Yamaz Johansson's book Blowback, how the CIA tried to tangle Korea and it backfired. And it's one of the areas that division, the 38 parallel, all became a reality. Everyone's got to look at the bigger picture. People are just seeing tunnel vision, not like one dimensional. I've been talking to folks, some certain people, and I'm like bizarro world. We could be an empire, but they can't. We can have missiles, but they can't. You guys are treating your people like garbage, but we'll play with our good friends that live in the Middle East that chop people's heads off. We can use chemical bombings. You can't. See that game, my friends? It's like a monopolization of dirty warfare. Completely unacceptable. A form of genocide. But they don't want you to know that. Very mind-controlling indeed. Wow. So I'm going to add that. Definitely add the Bay of Pigs in there so you can look for yourselves. Be right back. So stay tuned. All right, cool. So next we're going to be talking about Camp for Florida Bulldog. Is written by Noreen Marcus. They say a Florida bar has money back guaranteed of clients. of thieving lawyers, but collecting isn't easy. The Florida bar has a pot of money available for swindled law clients, but getting some isn't easy. For starters, you have to document exactly what your thieving lawyer extracted during your attorney-client relationship. The breakup must have been painful. After the Florida Supreme Court disciplines an attorney, P.J. Osborne swings into action. Osborne, who runs the bar, 50-year-old client's security fund, wants reimbursed the bad lawyer's client, or client, as there are more often more than one. It's what I eat, live, and breathe, said Osborne, who has worked with the fund for a decade. By all accounts, he's not exaggerating. Osborne coordinates with one assistant in her Tallahassee office and 24 volunteer lawyers to vet every claim that were 329 in the 2015-2016 fiscal year, and makes recommendations to the Florida Bar's Board of Governors, the final arbiter of payments. A few headline-making cases produced big numbers. Bar leaders were concerned that the many victims of notorious ex-Florida lawyer Scott Rothstein's $1.2 billion Ponzi scheme would strain fund resources. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Most of the victims didn't want to admit publicly they fell for a cock and bull story, says S. Greer Wells of Gray Robinson in Jacksonville. From 2004 to 2014, Wells served as a liaison between the bar committee that oversees the funds and the board of governors. Rothstein wannabes. Still, Rothstein wannabes pop up occasionally. The numerous pay plans for this bar Coconut Creek lawyer, Nicholas Steffens, now serving a 10-year term for stealing from foreclosed homeowners all over the state, totaled $731,896.11. That's the kind of woman. No, $731,000. Excuse me, $976.11. My mistake. I said 731 million. That's pretty damn close to a million, right? You need a few bad apples stealing a lot of money, and fun gets creamed, said David Scholzen, the Broward Assistant State Attorney who prosecuted Steffens. He works closely with Osborne to locate victims in bar-generated public corruption cases. In theory, any shortfall is temporary because the convicted lawyer must eventually repay the fund the amount it pays out in claims. In practice, the ex-con likely has a hard time making restitution though there's always the chance of a lottery win. Scholten offered hopefully. Lori Holcomb, director of the Florida Bar Division that runs the client security fund, said, "Yes, we do get restitution. Do we ever recoup 100%? No. As part of the rehabilitation required for a disbarred lawyer, to be readmitted into practice, the client security fund bill must be paid in full. Most claims are under $10,000, Osborne said. It should be noted that crooks like Steffens comprise a tiny percentage of licensed Florida attorneys, 0.1%, according to the bar. The other 99.9% are funds involuntary underwriters. Out of every $265 bar dues paid, $25 goes there. That's roughly $2.5 million a year from the bar, just over 100,000 members. The fund is supplemented by the $250 fee that every out-of-state lawyer pays to appear in Florida court for a single matter. The Florida Fund and others like it in virtually every state perform a public and private relations service for the legal profession. The fund is not well publicized outside the circle of people whose lawyers clearly victimize them. There is a reason for that. It wouldn't make much sense to say file a claim if you're not eligible, because that will cause more bad feelings toward the bar, Holcomb said. So you're always going to have a little cluster, I see, right? Don't wait too long. The fund most often turns away people who wait too long to file. Complain about a theft that just didn't happen within the attorney-client relationship, or fail to provide some sort of proof of payment, she said. There is a 2-year window for claims following the lawyer's death or discipline. which stretches to 4 years for a good cause, such as a lawyer successfully hiding the scam. If defrauded clients fill out the fund's paperwork correctly and wait patiently for disciplinary actions and bar procedures to play out over 2 to 3 years, they can be handsomely rewarded and come away with warm feelings toward the Florida bar. We were absolutely thrilled to death, and everybody was so great to work with, said Pam Kolinsky of Ingleside, Illinois. She and her husband Wayne, both retirees, recouped the entire $3,000 they thought they were spending on a loan modification after a Florida lawyer named Sarah Facy convinced them she could reduce their mortgage payment. Pashi, who claimed an affiliation with the Orlando law firm and actually represented a California boiler room type operation that did no mortgage loan modifications. In Florida, she was suspended twice before her 2015 disbarment. Kolinsky said they were one of the first to file a complaint against Pashi. Spotting a list of 50 victims, they fear they would never see their money again. For us, living on pensions and Social Security, we were frightened, said Pam Kolinsky, a retired financial officer. Wayne Kolinsky was a teacher and coach. Similarly, oncology nurse Ellen Addis of Palm Beach Gardens did well with the fund, retrieving 100% of her family's $150,000 loss from Julie Kronos. The disbarred Winter Park lawyer was criminally prosecuted for a wide-ranging scheme and is serving 10-year sentence in federal prison. Kronos was supposed to handle money from the sale of the house Addis' late parents left to her and her two siblings. When Kronos dragged her feet about distributing the money, Addis' brother, the Maryland lawyer, started hounding her, and she finally sent the checks. They bounced, and the siblings had a problem. Our parents worked very hard, and we knew they would be thrilled to leave us the inheritance. And when the money was stolen, we took it very personally, Addis said. They also took it to the police, who brought in the FBI. It's insane, yeah? Remember, it's government, too, so you don't think like it's got to take time. How can proceed here? Even bigger losers. Several former Kronos clients suffered even bigger losses, sued her, and won judgments they may never collect. She's on the hook for $2.7 million in restitution. Karma favored Addis and her siblings. We chose to go through the fund rather than sue her for practicality reasons, Addis said. There was a lot going on, and we didn't have near as much money stolen as the others did. I felt we had a better chance to get something through the fund. They were also lucky that Kronos' other victim didn't file a claim with the fund because all successful claimants in a given year are paid on a pro rata basis. So it'll be like everything make an estimate. If funds hold $2.5 million in claims, total $2 million, for instance, everybody gets 100%. If it claims to be more than $2.5 million, everybody takes a proportionate cut. So right there, it will be like rounds, estimates. Of course, the fund can't please all cheating clients all the time. Victims of malpractice or outrageous fees must look elsewhere for justice. A company lawyer can't perform the bare minimum to avoid detection and punishment. Yet the client gets burned. The dupe payer may be an innocent relative of a criminal defendant or inmate who loses not only money but the opportunity to save to improve a cherished life. Lawyers who deal with the attorney disciplinary system describe the client's security fund as imperfect but worthy. Obviously, it's a fund of a last resort, a safety net, said Andrew S. Berman, a Miami attorney who has represented lawyers in disciplinary actions. We take responsibility for the bad apples as a group, but we don't have the wherewithal to act like an insurance company and write somebody a check. So the whole thing is you got to make sure everything has merit, which is understandable. Remember, it's government too, bar association, so it's all through the state system. One of the things you have to really look out for, make sure you do your homework on these attorneys. Don't just get some Joe blow you mad at the bar. If the guy claims to be an attorney, make sure you get all your facts straight. Because even though the Florida Bar Association, they do have sites on that, who's in good standing, who's not. That's good to know. Just look it up. And plus, it's a shame, when people get stiffed. But name of the game is, if you have a claim, have all your facts, be organized. That's how you got a better chance of winning a case. If you go in there with your hands in your pockets, then they may just toss it to the side. They go next. But fact is, keep tabs, keep records, put things in writing. All right. Next one here came from Counterpunch, and by John Alberg. It says here, the U.S. just declared war on Iran. Against all common sense, moral considerations, and international law, U.S. President Trump tonight decided to place the United States outside the international so-called community and isolate itself from Iran. He withdrew the United States from one of the most important negotiated peace-oriented agreements that have ever been signed, the one that prevents Iran, if it has ever wanted to, from acquiring nuclear weapons. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, of July 2015. All about this agreement is text here, so you folks can read it yourselves. All right, so listen to the bobbleheads. But one thing I know for sure, the Senate never approved this particular document, so technically it's unconstitutional. But legally it's unconstitutional. So I'll continue on here. Noteworthy is that the nuclear deal is incorporated into international law by UN Security Council Resolution 2231. Either the U.S. already at that point stated as an exceptionalist state that it did not consider the deal binding for it. With the exception of Germany, the deal was negotiated cynically, of course, by countries which have themselves thousands of nuclear weapons. If never mentioned, the only state in the region that possesses them against international law in the form of the UN resolution, and additionally has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, that the state of Israel whose nuclear weapons, Western politicians and their loyal, politically correct media omit mention of, and systematically and uniformly, as if orchestrated by an invisible hand from above. Back in 2014-2015, many of us stated that the alternative to a negotiated deal would be war. I'm still in the belief that President Trump's announcement tonight will turn out to be a declaration of war on Iran. It's here the developments since then in the Middle East point dangerously in the same direction. Towards the end, his speech was extremely bellicose, means violent, and one long systematic violation of the UN Charter Article 2.4, that all members shall refrain in their international relations from threatened use of force against the international integrity or political independence of any state or in any other matter inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Now, I'm not a big fan of the UN myself. I'll be very sincere. So, oops, I hit the wrong button. But one thing for sure, according to business argument, we don't need someone talking about going to war with another country that's not considered a threat. So, I'll just continue on here. Without a doubt, both the decision itself, the way it was announced, as well as the threat stated related to the future, was nothing but a series of indisputable violations of the UN Charter. For all practical purposes, he seems also to question that Iran has a right to self-defense according to UN Charter's Article 51. It cannot be deemed acceptable that the U.S. or Israel or any other country can deny Iran a right to have conventional missiles and other military equipment, at least as long as not as other countries, including these two exceptionalist and nuclear-armed countries, have much more such weapons themselves. There are no international agreements that prohibit such types of weapons. Who has and who has not honored the JCPOA? It's the United States that has never honored its commitments according to the GCPOA. Old sanctions not lifted fully, new sanctions installed and controlled by the U.S. Treasury of all currency exchange that takes place via the dollar with the aim of punishing corporations and banks that trade and invest in Iran. Towards the end, Trump declared his admiration and for no conflict with the Iranian people. But since the 1979, his country has done everything in its power to cause troubles, economic in particular, to the Iranian people. He seems now have a perverse joy of announcing new sanctions and, well, the end of a long road kill people. Remember the 13 years of sanctions on Iraq that killed more innocent Iraqis than the military invasion and the occupation did? Trump's sanctions are open-ended. In the contrast to this, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna and all other experts, Iran has fulfilled its side of the agreement in every detail. CNN states on the page at the announcement note, the Director of Intelligence, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense have all said in the last 2 months they are complying with the deal. There being the Iranians J.O. Trump reference to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's stand-up comedian-like speech a few days ago, along how incredibly little evidence that his administration has, as his speech has been debunked completely by a series of independent experts, including Garth Porter. There's a link for that. In addition, it was 1992 when Mr. Netanyahu first began talking about Iranian attempting to go nuclear. No wonder the West talks about fighting fake because others use fake. No wonder it blames others for international law violations. It's called psychopolitical projection of one's own dark sides, and nuclear weapons and threats and lies belong to the dark side. Why Iran is not a threat. Unfortunately for the U.S. militarist foreign policy circles, Iran is not a threat to the U.S. or its allies. It's pure nonsense. For more than 250 years, Iran has not invaded anyone. Not exactly a record that the West and Israel can match. Iran is in Syria fighting the terrorism that the U.S. allegedly fights too since 9/11, September 11, 2001, with the marvelous result that 17 years and later 80 times more people worldwide are being killed in political terror actions than back then. Iran is in Syria upon invitation by a legitimate government of Syria, and thus in compliance with international law. So is, by the way, Russia. Whereas every other state or group, NATO allies, friends like Saudi Arabia and Israel on Syrian land, sea and air territory, or through money, weapons, and terrorism support are involved through gross violation of international law, including the UN Charter. Is Iran a big military power? To judge that, let's see that the last published figures by SIPRI, which is SIPRI, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, tell. The military expenditures of Iran, with 80 million plus people and a huge territory, to U.S. $15 billion. In the event of an attack in Iran, it may be supported by Russia or China, but that is unlikely. Who must Iran perceive as a likely coalition to attack it? It depends, of course, who starts it. If Israel should start it, it would hardly do so without prior green light by the U.S. and its commitment to help out. Saudi Arabia is now the third largest military power in military expenditure terms, i.e., larger than Russia. Israel's expenditures are U.S. $16 billion, larger than Iran's with a population of 1/10 of Iran. And remember, Israel has nuclear weapons. Saudi Arabia has been building up against Iran for a long time and built a coalition. Saudi military expenditures stand at $69 billion U.S. dollars. Oman's are $9 billion U.S. dollars. Bahrain is $1 billion U.S. dollars. So a little dependent on one's geopolitical assumption and hypothesis, we arrive at Iran, U.S. $15 billion against 16 plus 69 plus 9 plus 1, 95, or a 15 to 95 regional ratio. It is inconceivable that the U.S., France, and the U.K. would not intervene. Indeed, the U.S. tonight declared war on Iran. The military expenditures of the United States it stands at 610 billion U.S. dollars. France at 69 billion U.S. dollars, and the United Kingdom 47 billion U.S. dollars. So, is Iran a threat? Is Iran likely to start a war? No matter what you might otherwise think of Iran, it is not a threat. It knows very well that it has 4 nuclear weapon states against it and a group of adversaries in Iran-hating leadership whose combined military expenditures are, roughly speaking and according to the latest figures, a combined U.S. $820 billion and way more technically sophisticated, and knows that while its own military expenditures are 16 U.S. billion U.S. dollars, that the combined thinkable international coalition that could get involved in the war and around Iran is 55 times more resourceful in military terms. So forget it. It's explanatory fake foreign policy nonsense. They are neither mentally ill nor suicidal in Iran. In addition, in sharp contrast to almost all its potential military enemies, it is defensive in its military posture and foreign policy. Iran has gained strength in the region mostly because Western NATO countries have produced one devastating, predictable war fiasco after the other. Will the friends of the U.S. have the civil courage to speak up and take action now? Will the NATO allies and EU friends, who have been woefully incapable of showing solidarity with Iran by standing up against the United States' permanent non-commitment and to the violation of JCPOA, now be able to change course? Why they have so submissively and literacy avoided setting down their feet to say to Washington, dear friend, we will take action against you if you withdraw from the JCPOA because that step endangers all of us, could release a new round of violence, make the second Cold War Russia even colder, and send millions of refugees our way. There will be our red line, a concept you surely understand. Well, like I said before, the JCPOA was never approved by the Senate. So the whole thing is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter if President Obama signed an executive order. It's null and void. But we'll continue on here. Did NATO, EU really believe that President Macron's and Chancellor Merkel's pathetic appeasement attempts, such as talking in favor of a new agreement because JCPOA is not enough, at the White House would charm and persuade Trump and his warmongering neocon militarist team with obsessed Iran haters such as Trump, Bolton, Pompeo? Of course, neither NATO allies or countries such as Sweden, for that matter, will show the necessary civil courage to stand up against Donald Trump's reckless de facto war declaration in Iran tonight. They will talk and express concern, the best of case. For years, they have taken order from his master voice. Their state-financed institutional researchers and military academy experts have said about the same freedom of creativity as their former colleagues had in the German Democratic Republic at the time. Loud and clear criticism of U.S. foreign policy is still a taboo. For how long? With how much more pain brought down on innocent people in foreign lands? And is it anyhow too late now? NATO EU allies have not dared to speak the truth to Captain. Titanic sails at dawn and everybody shouting, which side you are on? That's Bob Dylan song, Desolation Road, 1965. The major ones likely to stand with Iran is in the dark hours are Russia and China. And Iran will need and deserves our sympathy. If there ever was a case for the need of standing with the Iranian people, this is it. They have suffered more than enough over decades, yes, due to domestic corruption, economic mismanagement, but particularly due to these suffocation, sanctions, and its people anywhere, and therefore in Iran too, who will pay the highest price as did and still do. The Serbian people, the Afghan people, the Iraqi people, the Libyan people, the Syrian people, the Yemeni people, to mention a few. Rather, the deceptively soft sanction, which over years turned into weapons of mass destruction, or bombings, invasions, arms trade, splitting of sovereign states, and other war crimes. The innocent citizens who never touched a gun are always, and without exception, those who suffer most. Like I tell people in the past, there's always a rank and file, individuals like you and I. Nobody believes a word of your statement about your respect and admiration of the Iranian people, Mr. Trump. With this step, you obviously could not care less about their warfare and the peace of the region. What should ideally be done now? Just a few nonviolent ideas that reflect what should be relevant to discuss and discuss objectively and in proportion into the violation of international law and ignorance of the common global good that the U.S., by its president's statement, is solely responsible for. Allied and friends of the U.S. imposed selected economic sanctions on the U.S. leadership not to only talk but show that they mean business. Allies and friends of the U.S. summoned the U.S. ambassadors to the countries for hard talk. Allies and friends threatened to close U.S. military bases in their countries and demand withdrawal of U.S. troops and secret forces from them. I agree with that. Everybody began to practice civil disobedience against the U.S. by trading, investing, and otherwise cooperating with Iran, its people, and institutions. After all, the U.S. is now deliberately trying to bully everybody else in whose interest it is to cooperate in various ways with Iran. If enough countries, corporations, and banks just ignore the U.S. threats, the U.S. legal system will not be able to handle all these cases. This is called a form of nullification after they're trying to address it, which is good. More countries should decide to trade oil other than currencies than the U.S. dollar. Citizens around the world go visiting Iran, see and hear for themselves that the well-educated, cultured, hospitable, and discussion-happy Iranians are truly like, because mainstream media and politicians have provided close to no information about the people, culture, and history and suffering of Iranian people, but only convey negative perspectives and images conducive to confrontations and future warfare. In addition, people-to-people exchanges below and above the state level is always peace promoting, and secondly, it's way more difficult to accept military activity against countries you know from your own experience and in which you have made friends. So, as much citizens diplomacy as possible now. All until the U.S. backs down from its new sanctions, stop violating international law, also verbally in its dealings with Iran, and finally accept those other countries do what is in their investment vis Iran without Washington's intimidation, threats, or preventive actions. If you leave a basic deal because you think it's in your own interest, you cannot influence its outcome and legitimately prevent others from acting at their best interest. Simple as that. What was this a declaration of war? I think yes. However, the U.S. doesn't bother about declaring war. It just do them. From now on, the U.S. will invent reason for confronting Iran, accusing Iran, threatening Iran. It will feel more free to do so being outside the deal. The only countries that are happy about the announced policy are those already gagging up against Iran. The rest of the world will distance themselves or condemn this step, but it is not likely that the U.S. will listen. It's constitutionally unable to see itself as an exceptionalist chosen country. The global ruler, number one in the system, tends to teach and not learn. Doesn't necessarily mean war on Iran tomorrow. I hope by all my heart that I'm wrong and it will never happen. But given Trump's decision and all other events and trends and coalition building against Iran since 2015, it is much, much more difficult from today to ignore the risk of a U.S.-led attack or war on Iran. We must remember that the U.S. conflict with Iran is not only about nuclear weapons, but also about a long and very conflictual relationship since the CIA-led coup against Iran's democratically elected prime minister, which was Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953, who had cheat to believe that Iran's oil belongs to the Iranians. It is about today's Iran, Syria, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Since yesterday, Iran supported Hezbollah in Lebanon, and perhaps less to every grasp, but perhaps more importantly, it's about to decline the U.S. empire worldwide, and therefore an ever-increasing reliance on that last power dimension where the U.S. is still second to none. The MIMAC, the military, industrial, media, academic complex. The hammer will be used if it's only tool in the toolbox, no matter the problem to be fixed. As a poster, there's an interview with me on Iran's International Press TV, 9 hours before Trump's announcement. Another will follow that made it right after his comment on the Iranian President Rouhani's very balanced, moderate reaction to it. You can see that for yourselves. And it is it's very annoying because one thing for sure, friends, you gotta study the history of all these areas before jumping to conclusions. And the fact is, Operation Ajax exists, and it's a fact. And still, people want to go over there. Say, "Oh, we're gonna attack this country." Give me a break. Study your facts before you jump on some bandwagon, But a person like myself is not really lovey dovey with the Iranian government. I'm not making any judgment, but no one wants to go to war. And it's been talked about for a very long time. So that's why I gotta say, one of those things, folks, got to look at the bigger picture. And I'm trying to look for the best link to check out as I speak. It's interesting too because it has a lot of great history. Persia has a real beautiful history about them, and people should actually just look at this stuff before talking smack about them. Iran and Persia means land of the Aryans. All right, and if you call an Iranian Arab, you're looking for a fight. That is a fact. But the bottom line is this: people want to live in peace over there. You don't want to go and invade that country because they will fight back. They did that with the Iraq-Iran war. Even though it was considered a truce, a tie, they pushed the Iraqis back out of their borders. A lot of good people, a lot of good men and women who served, and civilians have died, suffered from it. But we got to make a big lesson. George Washington says it best: beware of foreign entanglements. That's why if Benjamin Netanyahu said we should go and attack them, I said, you do it by yourself. Let's see how tough you are. We're not going to get involved in foreign entanglements anymore. A lot of us are tired of it. And President Trump, if you believe what your henchman in the cabinet says, go attack Iran, you throw them on the front line. Let's see how tough they really are. All right. Let's see here. Ooh. Got one more. And this one here is from Bob Livingston's Alerts. And this came out, I just sent this today via email. And I'll read it for you folks. It says here, Netanyahu's Dog and Pony Show by Bob Livingston. The unseen adepts that rule the world are masters at understanding human nature. Throw a few visual ads up littered with code words like nuclear and Holocaust and attack and Iran, and the people lose their minds. So the mainstream reaction to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent Dog and Pony Show about Iran's nuclear ambition was entirely predictable. Standing before a screen showing his visual ads, Netanyahu claimed Mossad agents had pilfered hundreds of thousands of documents and mounds of other evidence indicating Iran lied about its nuclear intention when it signed a deal with President Barack Obama in 2015. It is a deal President Donald Trump has called the worst deal in history. The show provided great fodder for that war party. It has been itching for a war with Iran for almost 30 years. Iran is one of the countries targeted for cleanup by globalists in the George Herbert Walker Bush administration as far back as 1991, according to retired General Wesley Clark, former commander of Supreme HQ Allied powers in Europe and one-time Democrat presidential candidate. With North Korea peace on the table, the War Party has amplified its venom toward Iran, which is partnered with Syria and Russia, a fight against CIA-backed Islamic State terrorists and moderate and Al-Qaeda-linked Islamists. New World Order funded. Absolutely. American politicians run to Israel's side like dogs to fresh meat. As we told in a recent letter, the pro-Israel lobby pours millions of dollars in campaign coffers on both sides of the aisle and controls both U.S. mainstream media and the think tanks that distribute foreign policy papers and the lobby the American people through the mainstream media for more foreign wars. Think for me, rah, rah, rah. If I criticize you, you say I'm anti-Semitic. That's right. This is not the first time Netanyahu is trying to stoke the embers to drive America into war with Iran. In 2015, before Obama signed the Iran deal, while Netanyahu was embroiled in the bitter re-election campaign, Netanyahu went to Congress and spoke in a popular language about the danger Iran poses to Israel and the world. Yes, world leader, think for me. It's like when, what's that president's name? Felipe Maldon or Calabone? It was talking about the Second Amendment should be restricted. Ben was applauding. Yay! It's like you smack that guy, throw him back into the Rio Grande. Let's give you an example. Foreign influences are dangerous. John Jay wrote that in Federalist Papers 2 through 5 and George Washington's farewell address. So I will continue on here. When we questioned Netanyahu's motives for grinning up war with Iran for long, knives came out. One thinks that is legitimate to question whether sending U.S. troops to Iran to fight Israel's interest was in America's interest, but it is apparently not. According to conventional wisdom, and number of commenters for that question merely drew the expected and mindless knee-jerk charges of anti-Semitism and dozens of promises to drop us from their reading list. But modern Zionism has nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. Therefore, Christian Zionism is not anti-Semitism, though Zionists have long used the claim of anti-Semitism to quell all criticism. There are the Jews who are not Zionists, and there are Zionists who are not Jews. Of course, like the word racism, anti-Semitism is being so watered down, and they still believe you can get caught hook, line, and sinker. He presented himself as a great friend to Israel and referred it to as the United States' greatest Middle East ally. Then he followed that with one of the most important questions he's likely ever asked. Imagine our circumstance in the world where there are no Israel. How many battleships would be there? How many troops would be stationed? Imagine indeed. As Lillian Rosgarten of Mondelez pointed out, the Israeli Zionist Ministry of Propaganda has successfully blurred the distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. With clever adeptness and manipulation, they have succeeded in spreading a form of domestic terror to Europe and the United States. This form of terrorism, as defined by the Tsars, is a calculated use of violence, of a threat of violence to civilians in order to attain goals that are religious or political or ideological in nature. This is done through intimidation, coercion, or instilling fear. Use of the Holocaust as propaganda invites fear and hysteria. Right off of Edward Bernays' playbook. Propaganda was published in 1928. But Netanyahu need not have even played the Holocaust card, because just questioning whether America should put its interests first makes the neocon right fundamentalist Christians lose their mind. The neocon American right fundamentalist Christians and most politicians have become Israel's firsters because of Zionism, propaganda, and false teaching. There are different reasons for blind support of Zionism among the people and the politicians. For the politicians, it mostly boils down to money and their devotion to the New World Order. You can look up the Greater Israel Project too. For many other people, it comes down to a misunderstanding of or a war misinterpretation of the Holy Scriptures. This is something I will write about in future letters. In the meantime, please hold off calling us anti-Semites. We harbor no grudge, no hold any animus against Israel or its people or Jews, wherever they may be. But it's okay to criticize rogue elements in the government. That's not being anti-Semitic, my friends. I do take issue with decisions of some of the Israel's leaders, its agencies, its foreign policies, just like I do with American leaders, its agencies, and foreign policies. But criticizing Israel's leaders or foreign policy is not anti-Semitic, any more than criticizing U.S. foreign policy or its leaders is un-American. I love my nation, but I fear what my government has become and where it wants to take us. My efforts are devoted to helping us break the bonds of conventional wisdom and find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. That's some. Always love reading his work, man. Bob Livingston. He's been doing it for a very long time. From the Personal Liberty Media Group. Like I said, my friends, whoever's out there, we cannot be involved. Have foreign nations tell us how to dictate our lives, and what to do for their own personal gain. What you're seeing is a political power at its finest. They want us to be their lapdogs, their bellboys, their peasants. It doesn't matter what country it is. It's just an example. Let their government know, hey, if you want to start a war, you have us put out of it. I'm sick of this crap. That's why I'm against all foreign aid. Not just to one country, not just to Israel, but all foreign aid around the world. And people get a little compromised, get a little sensitive. And you know what? I could really care less. You better start looking at the bigger picture out there to all you PC folks. Politically correct. I would take a dump and flush the toilet. I find it more memorable than the way you think. So, I'm not here to pick on anyone. Just let them be aware. Bigger fish to fry. Look at things in a bigger perspective. Because we're all going to get hurt by this one way or the other. And that is it. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share through social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or if you're sending something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with Decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/local 3 eyes. Hit me at Gab, G-A-B, more of a free speech version of Twitter. And all you folks out there, please donate money to freedomsnetworks.com because they are hurting. And they're a small social media site, but they are very privacy friendly. Not like the mainstream social media groups. Okay? I greatly appreciate it. In addition, you can email me at lookinluck3@gmail.com or the encrypted ones. If you have a Proton Mail account, lookingluck03 on protonmail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember, that demoniac resistance of the soul can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.